Since 2023, Stoicism has become my guide to life. The principles contained within this philosophy align perfectly with my own that I developed through my journey with adversity starting back in 1997. My introduction to this way of living didn't come because I went looking for something to guide me. It happened because, well, before I even knew what Stoicism was, people were describing me as Stoic, and while I had a basic grasp of what this meant, I had to educate myself on the subject to fully understand. In 1997, a motorcycle accident would throw me head first, quite literally, into a world of constant severe pain and physical impairment brought about by damage to my spinal cord. From the first day that I was aware of what had happened to me, I was already focusing on what I still had and not what I'd lost. I chose gratitude over regret, and I was at peace with what had happened. I soon learnt to apply this mindset I developed into other areas of my life, and when in 2023 I finally learnt what Stoicism is, I recognised the strong connection that we had, and that I now had a framework that I could measure my progress against. Today I'm going to share with you a few of the key lessons and principles that I used and how they tie in with Stoicism and challenges that we all face in life. In the future, we will cover these topics and many more in their own episodes in greater detail, but this will give you a good overview of why Stoicism and I are so well suited. With 5 main nerve trunks torn out of my spinal cord, it was soon kind of apparent to me that not only had I lost my ability to control my arm, but I also had no control over whether I was in pain or not. This was my new reality. What could I control in this situation? How I responded to it, my thoughts, actions, and words. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, tells his students, "We don't control what happens to us, but we control how we respond to what happens." I certainly had no say in the nature of my injury. What was done, but I had all the power to decide how this would affect me. No matter what situation we find ourselves in, even if we feel we don't have control, we still have control over how we respond. From being stuck in a traffic jam through to experiencing a life-changing event, all of us find ourselves in situations where we feel like we are stripped of power. How can we combat this feeling, and what are the consequences of not doing so? In the book Discourses, a collection of Epictetus' lectures, at the very beginning, he introduces his students to what is in our power of control and what isn't, and it's laid out very clearly, although for some it might make for uncomfortable reading. He tells his students that the only thing in our power of control is our will, and that everything else, our own body, our wealth, our reputation, our status, are not in our power to control. Even the people we care about, family and friends, are not ours to decide how long they will be in our lives for. Often we try to control everything that happens around us, from the way people view us, how others behave, to staying healthy and injury-free. But just like my injury, these things we do not have absolute power over. The more we try to control, the more frustrated and angered we become, or we experience disappointment or feeling of failure. And the less resources we have to focus on what we actually are in power of, ourselves. Focusing on what is out of my control has never helped me nor changed the outcome, but it certainly has made the process far less enjoyable. Picture yourself in traffic. It's slow and you're going to be late. The more we try to will people to get moving and hurry up, the more frustrated we become. Rather, if we focus on controlling our response to the situation in a way that benefits us, well, we're going to arrive at the same time anyway, but be in a far greater mood, which has got to be better for us. The same goes for all externals, the things we don't have absolute power over: weather, other people's behaviour, and sickness and injury, everything outside our will. We don't control them, only how we respond. Learning and understanding what is in our power to control and what isn't has been vital in my journey with my adversity, and something I've successfully applied to every area of my life. It is, in my opinion, critical to reducing harmful emotions and responses, and to improving the quality of our lives, whether we find ourselves stuck in traffic or living with an incurable condition. Imagine waking up every morning to find yourself in incredible pain and with an arm that isn't working. You need to begin your day, so you get up out of your bed and get your morning going, maybe a coffee and some breakfast. And you're still in pain and impaired. The rest of your day goes on like this. Everything you do, reading, eating, working, driving, spending time with family, is accompanied with pain that can bite whenever it wants, and an arm that hangs by your side, until finally you close the day off by returning to bed. Does this sound like something you could love? It might seem reasonable to think that most would struggle to even tolerate it. But I love it. I love my pain and impairment. I choose to have both with me. This isn't about acceptance. No, look, that's really only scratching the surface. I actually don't use that word when describing my approach. To me, acceptance has a ring of resignation about it, like, I can't change this, so I'll have to accept it. Now, granted, this is just my own take on the word, but for me, that didn't fit right. It wasn't accurate. Instead, I choose to embrace my situation, and in time, I would develop that to choosing my situation and ultimately loving it. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius tells himself, to love only what happens, what was destined, no greater harmony. The German philosopher Nietzsche is credited with coining a phrase for this, amor fati, the love of one's fate. This is the exact principle I had been employing for years, and for good reason. Epictetus talks often about how our will needs to be in alignment with what nature delivers us, and that when it isn't, when we're unhappy with what fate has brought us, well, that is akin to putting ourselves in jail. It often confuses people when I tell them that I choose what has happened to me, that I welcome it with affection, and that I love how my life is. Does this mean that I love pain and injury? No, look, of course not. But it's the reality I find myself in. It is my fate. It's not something I can change. So why be at odds with it? Why hate it? Why make an enemy of it and imprison myself? Surely it would be better to love it, have it on my side, working with me rather than against me, and be free. If I could choose to love my fate, practice amor fati with my injury, then I could apply that to everything in my life that is out of my control and cannot be avoided. The other options are to be indifferent or struggle or even hate what has happened. Hating will only cause feelings of anger, of being trapped and feeling like a victim. Being indifferent would be a better choice, but one that I feel would mean I don't fully make good out of my situation. Choosing it though, loving it, well, that gives me back control and makes this experience a good one for me. We can use this philosophy in all areas of our lives. The things that are out of our control, we need to not only accept, but embrace, choose, and ultimately love. This brings peace and tranquility to our lives. Would I choose to have an injury like this if I had a choice? Of course not. But as I don't have that choice, I do choose it, and that sets me free, free of my own prison. While I'm never not in pain, the intensity varies. Countless times a day I'll experience spikes or flares that knock even me back on my heels. These can be over as quick as a flash in a pan or can last for many minutes. I also know what it's like to not be in constant pain. The first 21 years of my life were like this, and I know without doubt any of these spikes I experience now would have knocked the stuffing out of me back then and left me needing to go lie down for a bit, at the very least. And in the early days of my journey with this injury, that's exactly what I thought I needed to do. But I quickly learned this was not the right approach. Needing to take time out after every flare, every spike, when the number of them per day goes into triple figures, just wasn't going to work. I would become bound to my bed, scared to move in case I might trigger another spike. Every time I repeated this behavior, I was conditioning myself to respond this way, and that created anxiety. What I needed to do instead was get back to moving straight away, to brush it off like nothing happened. I needed to get back to my rhythm. Doing this had a significant impact, not only eliminating anxiety about my pain, but it also gave me back freedom and movement. It gave me back control that I had given up. Arguably, the most important benefit was it made me forget about the individual spikes, and this took away any cumulative effect that they had. They no longer wore me down. And once again, repeating this approach conditioned me to respond this way naturally. Now, I can be walking somewhere and be hit with an intense burst of pain that would knock any normal person off their feet, and immediately, without thought, return to my natural state of composure. After discovering Stoicism for myself in 2023, I saw this approach being shared in this philosophy. Marcus Aurelius writes to himself on this topic, saying, "When jarred unavoidably by circumstances, revert at once to yourself, and don't lose the rhythm more than you can help. You'll have a better grasp of harmony if you keep going back to it. Epictetus tells his students that when we respond with anger, it isn't an isolated lapse. It is encouraging a trend and throwing fuel on the fire. While I wasn't responding with anger in those early days, I was still encouraging a trend that wasn't helpful. Again, I was able to draw comparisons between my experience with my adversity and life in general. While we all don't navigate the minefield of continual pain, we all do experience annoyances and interruptions to our day, and we must be wary of how we respond to these. That co-worker who grates us the wrong way, a task we are struggling to complete, an injury that nags at us. We need to be careful of how we respond to things that could upset, because if we don't revert to ourselves quickly, if we respond with anger or frustration, we are throwing fuel on the fire and creating a bigger problem for ourselves than we need. Not only will we still have to deal with the issue at hand, but now it's tainted with emotions, and the cost of that goes to us. Ruminating over something that was out of our control is stealing time from us, time where we could be doing what we need or want. I was lucky enough to have found myself in a situation where I had to develop the skills to avoid this, and Stoicism showed me I was on the right path. It takes practice, of course, but just like learning to ride a bike as a child, it soon becomes natural and requires no thought. As Marcus told himself, to shrug it all off and wipe it clean, every annoyance and distraction, and reach utter stillness. Child's play. What if I were to tell you that my accident in 1997 wasn't a bad thing? Some of you might think that I must have also knocked my head to think losing the use of my arm and living with continual pain isn't a bad thing. I doubt many, if any of you, would think it was a good thing, but if it wasn't bad, then must it mean it was good? I mean, it can't be both. Or is it neither? When it rains on a day that we wanted it to be sunny, we will say the weather was bad that day, right? But that same weather on that same day might be described by a farmer as being good, as it was needed for their crops. For one person, the weather was bad. For the other, it was good. So what is it then, as it can't be both at the same time? The answer is, it was just an event, neither good nor bad, but rather something we remain indifferent to. What decisions we make based off this event, well, that's where good and bad exist. Epictetus tells us in discourses numerous times that good and bad exist only in our judgments, our decisions, our actions. In other words, within us, within our will. Life really is what we make of it. I made choices after my accident, acted and made judgments that were good for me and the people around me. I know of others with similar injuries to me who made different decisions and judgments, ones that were ultimately bad for them, and they, for the most part, will tell you that their journey has been a horrible one. Some of these people believed that I can't have experienced the same pain and adversity as them until they heard my story and realized differently. If this injury was a bad thing, then surely my experience too would have been bad. Labeling things as good and bad is tying ourselves and our happiness to things outside of our control. The traffic was bad and it made me angry. The weather was good, so I was happy. An injury we experienced was bad and stopped us from enjoying life. Applying these labels to things not in our power to control can lead to feelings of frustration, anger, disappointment. They are simply not needed. The traffic was heavy, that's all. It was sunny, that's all. Marcus Aurelius tells himself, you take things you don't control and define them as good or bad. Much of our bad behaviour stems from trying to apply those criteria. If we limit good and bad to our own actions, we'd have no call to treat other people as enemies. How about winning the lotto? Most of us would think that's a good thing, right? We can retire, travel, buy that nice car and house, help family and friends, or donate to charities we like. The world is our oyster. But how many times have we read or heard of people losing everything after winning a big payout, families torn apart and lives turned upside down? If winning the lotto was a good thing, then we would only hear good stories from those that have won. Once again, winning the lotto is neither good nor bad, it's just an event. The judgments, the decisions, the actions we take either make it a good thing for us or a bad thing. Having the experience I had back in 1997 and living it continually for every day since has shown me firsthand where good and bad truly exist. Not only for my accident and the journey it set me on, but for every event that I've been through, both after and before my accident. It's given me the power to create the narrative of my life. There I'd be, sitting on my couch, watching a movie where the characters are in some place far away, everyone seemingly unbridled with persistent pain and injury. And that place looked enticing to me. There was no pain on their faces, no tension in their movement. I wanted that. I thought I needed that. But I knew that even if I booked a ticket there and then, headed out to the airport and flew to this idyllic location, my pain and injury would follow me and shatter that illusion. To some, this may sound like a sad realization that I'm snared by this no matter where I go. However, to me, it wasn't. Instead, it was a true light bulb moment. How could the understanding that I couldn't physically get away or escape from my adversity be an empowering discovery? By realizing and understanding that to escape my troubles, I couldn't run away. Instead, I needed to go inwards. What I experienced, the feeling of wanting to escape my troubles and improve my situation by going to a new location, is not a new one, nor unique to me. In fact, so common is it that Socrates, who is considered the father of Western philosophy, is quoted by Seneca on this issue. In Letters from a Stoic, Seneca tells of someone complaining to Socrates that travel abroad never did him any good, to which Socrates replies, "What else can you expect, seeing that you always take yourself along with you when you go abroad? Going to a new town, city, country, it won't change who we are as a person, it won't change our character. This goes deeper. It goes to our choices, our actions, our will." Once again, in Meditations, Marcus writes, "People try to get away from it all, to the country, to the beach, to the mountains. You always wish that you could too, which is idiotic. You can get away from it any time you like, by going within." We must understand, like I found with my realization, that to escape what troubles us, we need a change of character, not a change of scenery. This realization was a powerful one. No matter what personal struggle or difficulty we find ourselves in, running away from it won't help us, as we are running away in our own company. If we're making poor decisions in one place, the same outcomes will repeat no matter the change of air. Whether it's to do with financial decisions, relationships, to do with health, going somewhere new won't change our character. The initial distraction may go some way toward taking our minds off our troubles, but soon enough they will catch up with us again. However, once we start making decisions that benefit us and we can be at peace with ourselves, well, then we will find happiness and enjoyment no matter where we are. Before his death in jail, Socrates was reported to be at peace and content without needing to escape the walls that confined him. When we are not at peace with who we are, well, we are then placing ourselves in jail no matter where we are. Socrates, Epictetus said, wasn't in jail because he chose to be there. I've lost count of the number of times I've been told I have a legitimate reason to complain. While other people may see it this way, and I respect that, I personally don't. How would complaining help me? I really cannot see how it would. Would complaining to doctors magically fix my spinal cord? Would it eliminate or even reduce my pain? No, of course not. In fact, I know from experience that it would make its impact on me worse. Now sure, we have the saying that the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and look, I can't argue that. If there is something that requires fixing in life and it can be done, then we definitely need to bring it to the attention of those that can help. But that doesn't necessarily mean complaining, especially not never-ending complaining. Epictetus is quoted as saying, "I must die, but must I die bawling? I must be put in chains, but moaning and groaning too?" Seneca tells us that the motto of Stoic philosophy is to live in conformity with nature and what it brings us. Marcus Aurelius tells himself to not be overheard complaining about life at court, not even by himself. Have I ever complained about my situation? Of course I have. I'm only human. But I soon learnt that complaining, even to myself, was doing me no good. Doing so never improved my situation. It would only serve to make it miserable. Bemoaning our problems never makes our experience better. It causes us to focus on the issue, often magnifying it, rather than focusing on the solution. Even if there is no remedy to what troubles us, like in my situation with a permanent injury, not complaining is a solution in itself, as I don't focus on something I cannot change. I've removed that complaint from my life. I've been able to take this approach and use it with so much more than just my injury. We all complain about things out of our control, and each of these needless complaints compound over time, leading to stress and anxiety. From the way co-workers and bosses act at work, political discussions and comments we read on social media, complaining about the weather, the traffic, the younger or older generation, the more we complain, the more things we find to complain about. Moaning and groaning doesn't solve any of these problems and only adds to our troubles. Life can be challenging enough as it is. Why would we want to make it even harder on ourselves? Here's a surprise for you. I do not wish I had the use of my arm back, and nor do I wish that I didn't have to experience continual pain. Crazy, huh? I mean, surely that would be great, right? Being able to use both arms to do the things in life that I love doing, and to not have to experience pain while doing those things. I'm now well over 10,000 days into this journey, just over 27 years, and my hand and arm still aren't working. Would wishing they would help me? I'm sure I've wished for that in the past. Like I say, I'm only human. Maybe I didn't wish or desire it hard enough. No. Wishing for what I can't have, desiring what is out of my reach, is pointless. Even worse, it's harmful. Having failed to have my wishes come true over 10,000 times would surely lead to frustration, anger and sorrow, and a feeling of failure. Wanting to get the use of my arm back may seem like a harmless desire, but it's one that currently cannot be fulfilled. If I choose to focus on attaining that, I'll be met with frustration and disappointment. Therefore, I must limit what I desire. Stoic philosophers often argue that we need to eliminate desire completely, especially if we're not strong of mind. Even desires that we can attain should still be treated with caution. Regarding aversion, we are told by the Stoics to avoid only what is in our control, what is in our moral sphere. My injury and pain are not in my power to control, they are unavoidable. I've been through every treatment that medical science and more can offer that I'm prepared to do. While I have very successful methods of both mitigating and managing it, there's no avoiding it. So what can I avoid then? Feeling negative about it, beating myself up over it, feeling like it's a burden, a tragedy, magnifying it in my imagination. We have all experienced the pitfalls of uncurbed desire and the bitter disappointment of failure when we can't get what we want, or lack of satisfaction when we actually do. Happiness through freedom isn't achieved by satisfying your desires, said Epictetus. It's done by eliminating them. And we've all tried to avoid things we can't, deadlines at work, meetings, people we'd rather not deal with, pain and injury, heck, even getting out of bed on a cold morning, right? We fill ourselves with dread and drag our feet towards the inevitable and suffer through it. Or we can embrace what we must experience, knowing that it can't be avoided and be better off for it. Either way, we will still have to deal with these events. It's just up to us how that goes. For more than half my life, I've been going through a continual test. It's the sort of test that the harder it challenges me, the more satisfaction I feel in passing it. And if I was marking my own work, I'd confidently give myself a very high grade. Not perfect, mind you, but near enough to it. This test has been on preserving my character under duress of pain and injury. We all know that pain can be intrusive, and most of us have experienced an injury that limits our movement or ability. It can be a lot to deal with, especially as life doesn't slow down to accommodate our needs. Bills keep coming, responsibilities need to be fulfilled, people come to us with their problems. It might be enough to make you feel like putting everything on hold until your pain or injury is gone, before you snap. But I can't. I can't put my life on hold until this is fixed, because that isn't happening. Not only do I have to contend with life's normal frustrations and challenges, but I must also do this with constant pain and impairment. Even so, I firmly believe pain and injury are not justifiable reasons to let my character be poorly affected. Giving in to anger or frustration wouldn't help anyone and would only harm me. I'm not the only one to see it this way. In Meditations, Marcus writes to himself the following: "For times when you feel pain, see that it doesn't disgrace you or degrade your intelligence, doesn't keep it from acting rationally or unselfishly." I take great pride in my ability to not be disgraced or degraded by my pain. It's a feeling of great power to rise above this, especially as so often no one can see what I'm facing. Of course, this feeling prompted me to realize that I could also apply this everywhere in life, including areas where I might still have some room for improvement. Traffic is a great example. We all know that even the most patient people can have their character tested by this experience. Or waiting on hold for 2 hours until finally we get to speak to someone. only to find we've been put through to the wrong department. Yeah, that'll test us too. From these everyday examples right through to situations like mine and far worse, how can we remain calm in these storms? Epictetus tells his students that we can put up with anything that seems rational to us, that physical hardships are tolerable by nature, and that we're attracted to whatever we think is reasonable. I can put up with my pain because it is tolerable. It isn't going to do me any harm, no matter how intense it gets. It's also rational for a person's body to experience pain and injury. So how can we find a traffic jam tolerable when we need to be somewhere? By understanding that other people wanting to get somewhere is rational, and that it's reasonable that, as we all pay for the roads, we all must share them. Now, I'm not going to argue that stress and hardship don't make it easy to choose to be angry or frustrated, but it is still a choice. There, I said it. Pain does not make us angry. Traffic does not make us frustrated. That co-worker didn't ruin our day. We choose to feel this way. We choose these responses. And yeah, look, it sometimes feels absolutely justifiable, but it's not. Here's why. Whether it's pain nagging at you all day, a co-worker, a client, traffic holding you up, an injury holding you back, all of these and more are no justification to turn ugly and lose our character, because the one that pays the highest price for that is ourselves. There will always be situations in life that grate us the wrong way, people who are shameless, rude, pain that never leaves our body. Don't let that take control away from you, remaining true to what it means to be a human. Nearly 250,000 hours, coming up on 28 years. As of the time of this episode being released, that's my current pain endurance record. During that time, it's pushed me to higher limits and tested me beyond what would be considered normal. I've lived through more pain in those years than most will ever experience in their lifetime. Heck, even 1 year is probably more than most will ever deal with. And I'm still here, standing strong and proud. Marcus writes to himself a lot about enduring physical pain and struggles, and his words echo my experiences. Unendurable pain brings its own end with it. Chronic pain is always endurable. The intelligence maintains serenity by cutting itself off from the body. The mind remains undiminished. And in most cases, what Epicurus said should help, that pain is neither unbearable nor unending, as long as you keep in your mind its limits and don't magnify them in your imagination. I can confirm that chronic pain is indeed endurable, and so can millions of others. Some might be suffering and struggling, but they are still enduring. And I've been able to maintain my serenity by doing exactly that, separating my body from my mind. So remember this principle: when something threatens to cause you pain, the thing itself was no misfortune at all. To endure it and prevail is great good fortune. Everything that happens is either endurable or not. If it's endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. If it's unendurable, then stop complaining. Your destruction will mean its end as well. Once again, Marcus's words, they echo my feelings. For many reasons, I do see this as a fortunate event for me, and I will expand on that in later episodes. But going through what I have, and still do, has shown me that I can endure anything. Anything I can't endure won't matter, that it was not unfortunate to experience it, and that complaining does not have to be a part of my journey. It's not just physical pain either. We've all felt emotional pain, the passing of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, being let go from our job. This too is endurable. It certainly might not feel that way at the time. We might be overwhelmed with grief, but it will pass and life will continue. Parents who have lost a child will wonder how they can go on if they'll ever smile or laugh again, and yet they do. They eventually laugh, smile, and enjoy themselves. This event visited my brother's family as well as many others, and while we never forget what happened, we endure it and prevail. We still laugh and smile. Living with persistent pain has been a blessing for me. It's taught me that pain and hardship are not only tolerable, not only endurable, but like in my situation, can sometimes be considered fortunate and cause for celebration. We've all heard of the importance of staying in the here and now, remaining in the present moment. But what exactly does this mean? For me, it's about controlling fear and regret, fear of the future and what it may hold, and not wishing that the past was different. There were times early on in my journey that I did worry about the future, and they weren't really irrational fears either. Living with chronic pain and a paralyzed limb can be challenging enough, but what if in the future something else were to happen? What if I broke my only working arm? What if I was hit with another life-changing situation? What if I broke a leg? How would I get around unable to properly use crutches? What if? An endless number of what ifs. It occurred to me, though, that I was only focusing on negative possibilities. I was giving zero consideration to positive outcomes. Choosing to focus on what could go wrong was causing me to suffer before whatever may happen, happened. And if it did happen, I'm going to suffer twice. Seneca, it turns out, had already written of this, but I wouldn't learn of his quotes until many years later. He who suffers before necessary suffers more than necessary, as well as we suffer more in imagination than in reality. All too often, we overthink situations and catastrophize outcomes. Whether it's related to health, relationships, work, finances, the list goes on. It's all too easy to feel that things won't go well for us. As much as we should be prepared for all possible eventualities, we should not try to predict what will happen. The future is not written yet. And what if something adverse happens in the future? Well, Marcus dealt with the same dilemmas you and I have, and wrote to himself on this too, saying, "Forget the future. When and if it comes, you'll have the same resources to draw on." I had overcome a major change in my life. I too realized before hearing of Marcus that if I could overcome that, then I would not only have the same resources to deal with any future hardship, but even better resources, thanks to the knowledge I've gained from my journey so far. We've all looked back to the past and wished we could have changed something we did or said, or avoided something that happened to us. I've been asked this type of question by many who find out about my injury, even told that I surely would change things if I could. But here's the rub. I've never wanted to go back and change what happened. I have many reasons for that. For example, I wouldn't be who I am and doing what I do without that day. My life is great. I'm here. I have wonderful family and friends, and a strong purpose. The path my life took from that day on might be one filled with pain, but it's one in which I am content and comfortable. Another reason, it's not on the cards. There is no going back. Sitting here wishing for the impossible would be stupid or idiotic. It would be taking what precious time I do have, because very few of us know when our time is up, so it is precious, and wasting that time on something I can never attain. And not being able to fulfill that wish might eat me up. I've talked about this already in this video, and it's a common theme in the pain community. People will admit that they fill their days wishing they could turn back the clock, and they get upset over this, distraught and depressed. Staying grounded in the present moment doesn't only stop me from fearing what the future might hold, but also stops me from wishing I could turn back the hands of time for anything. It should be abundantly clear that my philosophy on living with adversity and life in general is so closely aligned with the teachings we find in the Stoic writings. I live this philosophy every day, not because I chose to adopt Stoicism, not that there is anything wrong with that, but because this is how I naturally handled what was delivered to me. It was by pure chance that the actual philosophy and I would cross paths. You can imagine how I felt discovering all the techniques and mindsets I had developed for myself were talked about thousands of years ago and seen as a path towards successful living. And because I live this every day and can demonstrate with ease and clarity its benefits, I am in a strong position to not only share with you the teachings we read in the books we have from philosophers such as Marcus, Epictetus and Seneca, but also my own first-hand experiences. Anyone can pick up one of these books and read them cover to cover, but not everyone can say they lived them and did so before they even knew of their existence. In future episodes, we will tackle all these topics and many more in greater detail, discovering just how we can make the changes in our lives that we'd like to see in the whole world. Because while we cannot change other people's behaviour, we can change ours. And if we all did that, well, then together we will have changed the world. If you want to be a part of that, to make a difference in your life and others, then come join us on this journey. See you in the next video, and remember to make good use of whatever your day may bring you.